Hello friends, and welcome back to our channel, your trusted place for focused and effective exam preparation. Today, we're kicking off a very important and in-depth series on the evolution of operational art. Yes friends, this is one of those topics that often appears in exams, and to help you master it, our team has put together a comprehensive question bank just for you. We'll be covering each chapter one by one, breaking it down into simple, easy-to-understand parts, so you not only remember it, but understand it deeply. Before we jump into the questions, let me quickly walk you through what this amazing book covers. It contains 7 well-structured chapters, each exploring the evolution of operational art through different historical and national perspectives. 1. Napoleon and the dawn of operational warfare. 2. Prussian-German operational art. 3. The Tsarist and Soviet operational art 1853 to 1991. 4. Operational art and Britain 1909 to 2009. 5. American operational art 1917 to 2008. 6. The rise and fall of Israeli operational art. 7. The Chinese way of war. In today's video, we're beginning with Chapter 1. And we've selected 10 important questions with detailed answers to help you grasp the key ideas and concepts easily. We've also launched PDFs on other key topics like the biography of Lieutenant General Cariappa, the 1947 War, and of course, the latest PDF on evolution of operational art too. If you're interested in a hard copy or a soft copy, just reach out to us. We'll be happy to help. We recommend that you either 1. Take a hard copy of the material, or first write down all the questions and answers. Then come back and follow along with the video to understand and connect the concepts better. We'll be covering each chapter in detail, so stay tuned, stay consistent, and don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Now, let's begin with Chapter 1. Napoleon and the dawn of operational warfare, top 10 questions. Question 1 states, analyze the evolution and limitations of operational art in pre-Napoleonic warfare with reference to the following aspects: the distinction between tactics, strategy, and operational level, role of uncertainty and enemy reaction in campaign planning, limitations in command and control across dispersed theaters, impact of communication and intelligence capabilities on operational effectiveness. How did these factors collectively shape the nature and conduct of campaigns before 1800? Let's tackle each part. First part: tactics, strategy, and operational level. Before 1800, people understood the basic levels of war. Tactics meant how to fight a single battle. Strategy was about winning the whole war using all your resources. And the operational level, which connects strategy and tactics, that was not well developed yet. So, battles were fought and wars were planned, but there wasn't much thinking about how to link a series of battles into one smooth campaign. Let's see the second part of the question: uncertainty and enemy reaction. One of the biggest problems was uncertainty. Commanders never had the full picture. The enemy could change direction, hide their plans, or suddenly attack. And because communication was slow, reacting to these changes took a lot of time. That made campaign planning very difficult and risky. Moving on to third part of the question: command across dispersed theaters. If an army was spread out in different areas, commanding them was a nightmare. Orders had to travel by horseback or messenger, which could take days or even weeks. So, it was hard to coordinate multiple armies at once. As a result, campaigns often felt uncoordinated and disconnected. Moving on to next part: communication and intelligence. Communication and intelligence were both very limited. There were no radios or instant messaging, only scouts, spies, or messengers on foot or horse. Sometimes, the only way commanders knew the enemy was nearby was by seeing dust clouds or hearing noises from a distance. That meant decisions were based on slow or unreliable information. Moving on to last part of the question, overall impact on campaigns. Because of all these limitations, campaigns stayed small and local. Commanders avoided splitting forces unless it was very safe. No multi-front attacks or high-level coordination. Most of the planning was tactical, not operational. Hope you have understood the answer. Friends, if you like the answer, please do like, share, and subscribe to this channel. If you want the PDF, please do contact us. We have made everything easy for you. Let's dive into question 2, where we look at the major limitations of operational art before Napoleon based on 4 key factors. Question 2 which states, analyze the key technological and systemic limitations that constrain the development of operational art prior to the Napoleonic era. In your response, critically examine the following aspects. A. The speed and reliability of information transmission in pre-modern military operations. B. The methods and effectiveness of passive and active intelligence gathering during the period. C. The physical limits of operational control exercised by commanders over dispersed forces. D. The impact of logistical constraints imposed by terrain, movement capabilities, and the state of cartography and mapping. Support your answer with relevant historical examples where applicable. A. Speed and reliability of information transmission. Let's us try to answer. Before the 19th century, there was no telegraph, no radio, and no instant communication. The only way to send messages was by foot or horseback, and that meant just 25 miles a day on average. Sure, rumors could spread faster, sometimes over 250 miles a day, but they were usually unreliable and vague. Some empires like the Romans or Mongols had relay systems using mounted couriers, but they worked only in friendly territory. They were costly and fixed to certain routes, and they were useless in fast-moving or enemy areas. Example, in 1346, King Edward III took a full month just to send and receive a complete message between England and Flanders. Imagine trying to coordinate an army like that. Moving on to next part of the question, B. Passive and active intelligence gathering. Now let's talk about intelligence, how commanders got information. Passive intelligence came from locals, deserters, travelers, or even rumors. But it was often wrong, outdated, or not useful for real-time decisions. Active intelligence involved spies, scouts, patrols, and prisoner interrogation. This was better, more accurate and focused, but also limited and risky. Scouts could only go a few miles out, usually 2 to 7 miles. They had to return before the info could be used. Missions took time and were dangerous. Example, even great leaders like Frederick the Great and Julius Caesar had to rely on locals or last-minute sightings when enemies finally came into view. Moving on to third part of the question, that is about physical limits of operational control. Commanders could only control forces that were nearby within a few miles. Anything beyond that range became detached and operated on local decisions. That meant coordinating multiple fronts or armies was almost impossible. Delays made unified action very difficult. Example, in the Battle of Crécy, 1346, Edward III tried to move multiple armies. But due to slow communication, they couldn't join forces in time. It became a solo operation. Moving on to last part of the question, that is about logistical constraints, terrain, movement, and mapping. Movement was painfully slow, and here's why. Bad roads, rough weather, rivers, and mountains. Heavy supply wagons and food needs. Plus, no detailed maps. There were no accurate, large-scale maps before the late 1700s. Commanders often used mental maps or rough sketches to plan. Example, even someone as brilliant as Frederick the Great had to draw maps himself or observe terrain personally to make decisions. Roman generals didn't have maps. They used travel logs called itineraries. Friends, all these factors, slow communication, weak intelligence, limited control, and poor logistics, made operational art almost impossible before the Napoleonic era. Campaigns stayed narrow, slow, and were usually centered on a single main force. Multi-front, flexible operations? Just not realistic back then. Dosto, if you're liking the content, please do like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Let's move on to question 3. And here, we're talking about why pre-Napoleonic commanders struggled so much with multi-front campaigns, and how logistics and communication played a huge role in limiting their options. Question 3 states, with reference to the chapter Napoleon and the Dawn of Operational Warfare, answer the following. A. What were the fundamental challenges that prevented commanders from effectively coordinating multi-front campaigns before Napoleon? B. How did logistical limitations such as mapping, communication infrastructure, and relay systems shape campaign planning and troop deployment? Let us tackle this part of the question one by one as asked in the question. First part of the question asks about challenges in coordinating multi-front campaigns before Napoleon. The biggest enemy back then? Time delays. 1. Slow communication. Orders and reports often took days or even weeks to reach other armies. A full decision cycle. To send an order, wait for a plan, get it approved, and confirm it could take up to a month. 2. No real-time updates. Commanders had no idea what was happening on other fronts. If the enemy changed direction or attacked suddenly, there was no way to respond in time. 3. Independent operations. Armies in different areas had to act on their own. There was very little coordination because the time lag was just too long. 4. High risk of failure. If one army was delayed or got attacked, joint operations collapsed. Example, in 1346, Edward III tried to coordinate his forces in France, but delays prevented them from uniting before the Battle of Crécy. He had to fight without support. 5. Command limits. Commanders could only control forces within a short range, about 2 to 7 miles. Anything beyond that became uncontrollable in real time. Let's move on to next part of the question, which asks about impact of logistical limitations on campaign planning and troop deployment. Now let's look at logistics, which were just as challenging as communication. 1. Mapping and cartography. Detailed maps didn't exist. Most generals used rough sketches, mental maps, or old itineraries. This made it hard to plan good routes, understand the big picture of where the enemy was, coordinate multiple armies in different areas. 2. Communication infrastructure. No telegraph, no radio. The only options were messengers on foot or horseback, signal fires, drums, or flags. But all of these were very slow, weather-dependent, limited in range and detail. You couldn't send complex instructions. 3. Relay systems. Some civilizations, like the Romans or Mongols, did use fast courier systems. They could send messages up to 200 miles a day using relay riders. But they worked only in safe, friendly territory. Needed fixed stations, which didn't help during fast-moving campaigns. And they were very expensive to maintain. Dosto, all of this meant that multi-front operations were basically too risky and too complex to pull off effectively. So, campaigns before Napoleon were usually limited to one main army with narrow goals and minimal coordination. It wasn't until modern mapping, faster communication, and better logistics that true operational-level coordination became possible. Let's move to next question. Question 4, which states, Clausewitz stated that most battles occurred by sort of tacit agreement between commanders. Based on the chapter, critically evaluate this observation in the context of pre-Napoleonic operational limitations. What does this imply about the nature of decision-making, initiative, and tempo in earlier military campaigns? Dosto, this question revolves around one of the most powerful observations in military history, a quote by Clausewitz. Most battles occurred by sort of tacit agreement between the opposing commanders. What does this mean? And why is it so relevant when we talk about warfare before Napoleon? Let's break it down. 1. What did Clausewitz mean? Clausewitz wasn't talking about actual peace talks or written deals. What he meant was that in many cases, both sides kinda silently agreed to fight, even if no one said it out loud. When two armies met on the field, and neither side backed down, a battle became inevitable. There was no real element of surprise, just a mutual readiness to clash. Let's move to the next part of the question. 2. That is operational context before Napoleon. So why did this happen so often? Simple. Operational art was still underdeveloped. Commanders couldn't coordinate large movements. They couldn't control troops that were spread out across distances. Poor mapping, slow communication, and weak intelligence made it almost impossible to plan anything bold or complex. This meant most operations were reactive, not proactive. Moving on to third part of the question, a slow and reactive tempo. Dosto, armies moved cautiously, like they were feeling around in the dark. Commanders rarely had accurate or timely info. They spent more time searching for the enemy than trying to outmaneuver him. Result? Battles happened when armies bumped into each other, not when it was strategically ideal. Moving ahead, let's talk about how decisions were made. Dosto, because of the fog of war and the lack of fast communication, most decisions were improvised. Commanders waited until the enemy was literally in sight before choosing whether to fight. Operational design? Barely there. Tactical needs, like seizing a hill or holding a bridge, often outweighed bigger picture thinking. Moving ahead, let us understand, initiative and control were very limited. Generals couldn't trust distant subordinates to act in sync. Orders took too long to reach. If something went wrong, there was no quick fix. Surprise? Deception? Super rare, because there was no way to coordinate timing across different forces. That's why most commanders only made decisions based on what they could see with their own eyes. Let's talk about tempo of campaigns. Campaigns were slow, cautious, and often frustrating. Armies moved in circles, waiting for the right moment, or for the enemy to make a mistake. One historian even said they circled each other like dogs sniffing around. Very little action, a lot of waiting. And finally, battles didn't start with bold moves. They started when both sides happened to be in the same place and neither was willing to leave. Let us look at what's the big picture here. Clausewitz's quote shows us just how limited pre-Napoleonic warfare was. He saw war as being about tactics and the decisive moment of battle, not about large-scale operational campaigns or clever maneuvering. And in a world without fast information, reliable maps, or true coordination, that made sense. Sometimes, the only way to win was to line up, concentrate your force, and hope for the best. And that's why Napoleon's rise was so revolutionary. He broke this pattern. He brought speed, coordination, and bold operational design into the picture. Let's move to next question. Question 5, which states, with reference to the chapter Napoleon and the Dawn of Operational Warfare, answer the following. A. Why was the emergence of operational art not primarily driven by technological advancements around 1800? B. In what ways did Napoleon's personal attributes and command methods complement the institutional and structural shifts in warfare? In this question, let's talk about how operational art truly came to life under Napoleon, and why this revolution wasn't because of fancy new weapons or gadgets, but something far more powerful, his leadership and organization. We'll break this into two parts. A. Why operational art was not driven by technology. From 1714 to 1815, technology was basically stuck. There were no major upgrades in weapons. The Brown Bess musket, for example, still being used 100 plus years later. Artillery and ammunition, interchangeable across armies. In battles like Acre, 1799, and Ulm, 1805, Napoleon's troops often used enemy gear. No tactical edge came from tech. In fact, Napoleon's armies didn't have better equipment than their enemies. And sometimes they had worse. Industrial tech, like railways, telegraphs, and rifled weapons, came decades later. So that wasn't what changed the game. Communication? Still weak. The optical telegraph, 1794, was slow, fixed in place, and useless in mobile campaigns. So what did change? The real revolution came from mass conscription and the corps system. Large armies, broken into smaller, mobile units, each one able to fight, march, and survive on its own. This organizational breakthrough gave rise to modern operational art. Moving next part of the question. B. How Napoleon's traits boosted operational warfare. Now let's look at Napoleon himself and why he was the perfect commander to bring operational art to life. 1. Relentless energy. Slept just 4 to 5 hours a night. Rode for hours. Worked deep into the night. Personally handled planning and reconnaissance. 2. Flexible command style. Gave short, clear orders. Trusted his marshals to adapt, which worked perfectly with the corps system. 3. Directed telescope method. Instead of waiting for reports, he sent trusted aides to gather real-time intel. This kept him one step ahead of the enemy. 4. Inspiring presence. His charisma and bravery earned deep loyalty from his men. Simply having Napoleon nearby could boost morale, especially in long, exhausting campaigns. 5. Decentralized control, unified vision. Marshals had freedom to move and make decisions. But Napoleon still controlled the overall strategy, linking actions across huge fronts. 6. Master of time and space. His use of speed, timing, and positioning was unmatched. Example, at Austerlitz, Marshal Davout's corps marched 60 miles in 36 hours and arrived just in time to help win the battle. Dosto, Napoleon didn't invent operational art with technology. He created it through leadership, organization, and a clear vision of how to move massive armies with purpose and precision. That's what made him revolutionary. Not better guns, but a better system. Moving on to let's talk about question 6. Enumerate the organizational components of Napoleon's imperial headquarters and describe their specific functions. Include the roles of the Maison and its sub-bureaus, the État-major and Berthier's responsibilities, the administrative headquarters, the directed telescope system, adjutants, and officiers d'ordonnance. Let us answer this question. You know what they say? A great leader is only as strong as the system behind him. In question 6, we're going behind the scenes to understand the organization that powered Napoleon's operational brilliance. Let's break it down into 3 key parts. Part 1. The Maison, the Emperor's military cabinet. Dosto, think of the Maison as Napoleon's strategic brain. This was his personal headquarters, managing everything from intelligence to planning to direct communication. It had 4 major sub-bureaus. 1. The cabinet. This team handled orders that Napoleon dictated himself, word for word. 2. The secretariat worked like a rapid response team, drafting, copying, and dispatching orders in real time. 3. The statistical bureau collected and processed intelligence and data from across the empire. 4. The topographical bureau maintained detailed maps and terrain analysis for planning and movement. Next, white mattered. This setup kept Napoleon constantly informed and allowed him to make rapid, high-quality decisions even in the chaos of a campaign. Next, 2. The État-major, the general staff. Led by Marshal Berthier, this was the core operational coordination unit. Their main duties: received updates and situation reports from the corps, helped plan campaigns and wrote directives, issued clear, detailed instructions that turned Napoleon's big ideas into real-world action. They used a dual-order system. Napoleon sent short, strategic notes, sometimes just a few lines. Then Berthier followed up with full operational orders for the field commanders to execute. This made command both flexible and highly efficient. Lastly, the administrative headquarters. This was the logistical backbone of Napoleon's campaigns. It managed everything behind the scenes while the army moved forward. Responsibilities included supplies and reinforcements, care for the wounded and management of prisoners of war, administering conquered regions and occupied territory. These headquarters were usually far behind the front lines, keeping things running without slowing down the action. Dosto, Napoleon's success wasn't just about talent on the battlefield, it was about the infrastructure of command he built around himself. The Maison gave him vision and intelligence. The État-major translated that into action. The admin headquarters kept the army running like a machine. Together, this system turned Napoleon's ideas into reality, fast, organized, and effective. And now, let's talk about one of Napoleon's most underrated advantages, something that made him faster, smarter, and more informed than his enemies. The directed telescope system. What was it? The directed telescope wasn't an actual telescope. It was Napoleon's personal intelligence and liaison network. Instead of relying only on his slow-moving staff or delayed battlefield reports, Napoleon used trusted officers to bring him real-time, direct intelligence, fast and unfiltered. Who were these officers? Two main types of officers worked under this system. 1. Adjutants generaux. These were senior officers, colonels or brigadiers. Napoleon sent them on high-level missions to observe entire units, evaluate battlefield conditions, or check on distant operations. 2. Officiers d'ordonnance. These were junior officers, often young, sharp captains. They collected tactical details like road conditions, bridge status, enemy movement, fortress defenses. Basically, they were Napoleon's eyes and ears on the front lines, gathering crucial details no map or scout report could provide. 3. What was the purpose? The goal was simple. 1. Give Napoleon live updates. 2. Bypass the slower, layered bureaucracy. 3. Enable faster decision-making than his enemies could ever manage. This gave Napoleon a huge edge. He didn't just rely on maps or outdated reports. He had his own people on the ground, feeding him information in real time. Final takeaway. The directed telescope system shows how Napoleon redefined battlefield intelligence. He didn't wait for reports to filter through the chain of command. He created a parallel system of direct observers and messengers, and that allowed him to outthink, outreact, and outmaneuver his enemies again and again. Moving next, ready to roll into question 7? Question 7 states, what role did the Corps d'Armée system play in overcoming the traditional risks of army dispersion and detachment? Support your answer with examples of how corps operated semi-independently during campaigns, particularly highlighting their interchangeable nature and ability to fight in isolation or regroup rapidly. Let's answer this question. Dosto, we've talked a lot about Napoleon's leadership, planning systems, and intelligence networks. But now it's time to look at the game-changing structure that made it all work on the battlefield. The Corps d'Armée, the real engine of modern operational art. 1. The traditional problem with dispersion. Before Napoleon, spreading your army out was a huge risk. You could be defeated in detail, your smaller, separated units picked off one by one. Command and control became a mess. The farther apart units were, the harder it was to coordinate. And don't forget logistics, scattered forces often lost supply lines or contact with HQ. In short, army dispersion used to mean vulnerability. 2. How the Corps system solved this. Dosto, Napoleon flipped the script with his Corps d'Armée system. Let's see how it worked and why it was brilliant. A. Semi-independent combat power. Each corps had infantry, cavalry, artillery, engineers, medics, and its own staff. This meant each corps could fight on its own, even when outnumbered to 1 or more, and still hold its ground for days. B. Interchangeable and modular design. Corps were built using a standard structure which made them flexible and swappable. Any corps could act as the vanguard, front, the reserve, or a flank guard. They could combine quickly for attack or defense. No need for messy reorganization. C. Dispersed yet cohesive. Corps operated about a day's march apart, giving them the ability to cover more ground, move fast, stay connected through messengers and staff coordination. It was the perfect balance, spread out for flexibility, but close enough to concentrate when needed. Let us look at 3. Real-world examples, Ulm and Austerlitz, 1805. Let's look at this system in action. 1. 7th Corps under Murat faked a move through the Black Forest to distract the Austrians, then quickly became the blocking force at Ulm. Later, led the advance into Vienna, showing how corps could adapt on the move. 2. 3rd Corps under Davout guarded Napoleon's northern flank during the Ulm campaign. Then, in an incredible feat, marched 60 miles in 36 hours to reach Austerlitz, held Napoleon's entire right flank alone, proving a corps could act with full independence when needed. Let us see the final result, operational art in motion. The corps system turned dispersion from a weakness into a strength. It allowed Napoleon to spread out forces for speed and flexibility, then rapidly concentrate them at decisive points, all without losing coordination or control. This was operational art, not just on paper, but in motion, in battle, and in victory. Dosto, Napoleon didn't just lead an army, he led a system. And the corps system was at the heart of it, the perfect blend of independence, coordination, and speed that redefined how wars were fought. Let's move into question 8, which states, Question 8. What operational lessons can be drawn from the Jena-Auerstädt campaign regarding command, control, and initiative in uncertain environments? Use examples to explain how Napoleon operated with incomplete information and how corps acted both independently and in coordination under pressure. To answer this question, take a deep dive into one of Napoleon's most instructive campaigns, the Jena-Auerstädt campaign of 1806. This campaign wasn't just a victory, it was a masterclass in operational art full of lessons that still apply today. Let's break down the key takeaways. 1. Operate decisively, even with incomplete information. Napoleon didn't wait for the perfect intelligence. He advanced on Gera even when the enemy's exact position was unclear. He made bold, aggressive moves, kept up momentum, and adjusted as things unfolded. Lesson: don't freeze while waiting for perfect clarity. Decisiveness and speed often win the day, even if some assumptions are wrong. 2. Decentralized execution, centralized intent. Napoleon gave his corps clear strategic goals, but left room for them to act independently. One of the best examples? Marshal Davout at Auerstädt won a massive battle without any direct supervision from Napoleon. Lesson: when the mission is clear, subordinate initiative becomes a major strength. 3. Coordination under pressure. Despite being spread out across 60 miles, Napoleon's corps moved like a machine, using cavalry screens, messengers, and support units to stay in sync. At Saalfeld, for instance, the timing between corps allowed them to support each other smoothly. Lesson: even in chaotic campaigns, lateral coordination between moving units is the secret to keeping things cohesive. 4. Command must withstand friction. Napoleon's command system wasn't perfect. His HQ was sometimes chaotic and informal, and Berthier, his chief of staff, often had issues with clarity in orders. But here's the key: the system was resilient. The corps commanders knew what to do, even if the top-level orders weren't always perfect. Lesson: your operational structure must survive friction and uncertainty. Build systems that can function even under pressure. 5. Initiative at low levels is critical. This campaign showed a stark contrast. Davout, outnumbered, isolated, but acted decisively and won. Bernadotte hesitated, missed his moment, and failed to support. Lesson: success in operational warfare depends on empowered, proactive commanders, not just the guy at the top. Now moving on to question 9, which states, question 9, discuss the significance of the directed telescope in Napoleon's command system. Explain its structure and personnel, adjutants generaux and officiers d'ordonnance. How it supported operational decision-making. Its value in bypassing bureaucracy and reducing staff dependence. Dosto, now, in question 9, we circle back to one of Napoleon's most powerful tools. His personal network of messengers, scouts, and field observers, often called the directed telescope system. Let's break down how it was structured, what it did, and why it mattered so much to his operational success. 1. Structure and personnel. This wasn't just a random group of aides. It was a deliberate, hand-picked team. Adjutants generaux. These were senior officers, trusted with sensitive, high-level missions. Officiers d'ordonnance, younger officers who acted as scouts, couriers, and frontline observers. These men were dispatched directly by Napoleon to visit corps commanders, observe real-time battlefield conditions, collect accurate intelligence, and return quickly with updates. They were fast, sharp, and reliable, a direct link between Napoleon and the front lines. 2. Role in operational decision-making. In an era when communication was slow and unreliable, this network became Napoleon's eyes and ears. It provided 1. Faster and more accurate updates than official staff channels. 2. A real-time picture of both French and enemy troop movements. 3. The ability to adjust plans on the fly, even in fast-changing condition. For example, the pivot toward Guerra was enabled by live intel coming through these officers, not through Berthier's slower headquarters system. 3. Bypassing bureaucracy and enhancing agility. Here's the real genius of this network. It helped Napoleon bypass the overloaded formal system, especially when staff headquarters were behind the curve, or corps reports were delayed, conflicting, or incomplete. This kept Napoleon's command fast, flexible, and responsive, even during complex multi-corps operations. Instead of being locked into slow decision cycles, he stayed nimble. He trusted real people on the ground, not just reports and paperwork. Final takeaway. This personal intel network gave Napoleon a huge edge in operational warfare. It boosted situational awareness, supported faster decision-making, and kept his entire system lean, responsive, and effective even when staff systems lagged behind. Once again, it shows how Napoleon's genius wasn't just in ideas. It was in building systems that worked under pressure and in real time. And now we arrive at question 10, the grand final, which states, explain the impact of the corps d'armée system on the conduct of operational warfare. Include the modularity and interchangeability of corps, their ability to function independently for limited time, the logistical and command advantages over traditional linear armies. Dosto, to answer, let's break down how the corps d'armée system completely transformed operational warfare, not just for Napoleon, but for military strategy for generations to come. 1. Modularity and interchangeability. Napoleon's corps weren't random groupings. They were standardized mini-armies, each with infantry, cavalry, artillery, support units like engineers and medics. That meant they could be combined, reconfigured, or swapped easily, tailored for specific missions or terrain types, shifted between frontline, reserve, or flank roles without wasting time. Example, in the 1806 campaign, corps were spread across 60 miles, yet reassembled seamlessly for battle. Lesson: this modularity gave Napoleon maximum flexibility in both planning and execution. 2. Independent functioning for short periods. One of the biggest strengths? Each corps could fight on its own for several days. This enabled fast movement across unknown or difficult terrain, engagements without risking the safety of the full army, better coverage of large areas without losing combat power. Example, at Auerstädt, Dewout's Third Corps won a major battle while isolated from the rest of the army, a perfect case of corps-level independence in action. 3. Logistical and command advantages. Before Napoleon, armies were centralized, rigid, and difficult to move. The corps system changed that completely. Corps could forage, march, and fight without fixed supply lines. No need for Napoleon to micromanage every move. Less pressure on communication systems. They could use multiple roads, reducing congestion and speeding up the campaign. And if one corps failed or was delayed, it didn't cripple the entire army. In short, the system brought agility, redundancy, and resilience, all critical for high-tempo operations. Dosto, the corps system revolutionized warfare. It gave Napoleon the ability to control large, dispersed forces, execute operations with speed, precision, and flexibility, and adapt in real time to changing battlefield conditions. It didn't just win battles. It created the foundation of modern operational-level doctrine that militaries still use today. And with that, we wrap up Chapter 1, The Evolution of Operational Art, 10 Key Questions, 10 Powerful Lessons. Stay tuned as we dive into the next chapters. From Prussian precision to Soviet depth, British adaptation, American power, and beyond. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because we've only just begun. If you want a HRD copy of the same, please feel free to contact us. Thank you and stay tuned. Jai Hind.